my name's Adam Rashid.
Nice.
I am a designer, developer, and commercial photographer, but left that out. I work with small businesses, and I started freelancing as a web designer in college. Loved it so much, I'm like, needs a job when you can just do this full time. And been working in the design community and getting my foot in the entrepreneurship kind of community as well. And I love coffee, I love design. And today I wanted to talk to you about design for entrepreneurs. Now, especially for startup entrepreneurs and people who are bootstrapping their own startups, design can seem a little daunting, and it often kind of gets pushed aside for other stuff, and that's understandable, but design can also help you get your business off the ground. And there are quite a bit of startups nowadays that are design-oriented and design-focused. There's a new one called Managed by Q. It's actually backed by Google Ventures now, and it's founded by 2 designers. So in this specific kind of lecture PowerPoint thing, we're going to go over how to understand design and tips and tricks on leveraging your talent and your resources to really get the best design you can. So what is design? Well, design isn't just logos and colors and visual aspects of visual aspect of everything. It's a lot more involved in the actual product and the service that you're creating. And why does it matter? Everyone knows what Nest is, right? Now, off the top, it's a
Actually, what is Nest?
Nest. Okay, it's a smart thermostat that is built from the ground up to be super user-friendly, well-designed, and smart. And it's one of the first home appliances to do so. And now it's actually owned by Google. And off the top of your head, try to think of another thermostat brand. Most people usually can't. It's because Nest took some industry that was usually very old school. No one really thinks of thermostats in their everyday life, but whenever you go to someone's house that has a Nest, that's one of the first things they're going to show you. And people talk about their Nest at parties. And that's all because it's designed from the ground up, and there's good thought put into it.
Just for the record, I have a Honeywell at home, and it's a digital interface, and I'm clueless how to adjust it.
Yeah, this does it for you.
Well, the arrows up and arrows down.
Yeah, it's
3 buttons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3 buttons.
Well, yeah, Nest kind of learns your patterns and behaviors and adjusts itself for you, and that's also design. Notice that's not part of the user interface or anything. It's actually how it functions, and that's also what design is. And great design makes you stand out and makes you memorable. Now, here are some examples of design that people might not think of when they think of what design is. When you're at the DMV for like your 5th hour in a row, that's due to bad design. It still is design, it's just no thought involved in a person's experience when they walk in the DMV. Being able to pay your groceries with pressing your thumbprint on your phone is design. A movie poster that makes you want to go see that movie, it's good design. The Wolverine poster just came out, and it's really cool looking, and it makes you want to go see it. A video on Facebook that makes you stop scrolling for a second and watch that video, that's also good design. And you'll notice all of these things I mentioned are more than how it looks. It uses design to really interact with the user or the customer or whatever. And we're going to start off with principles of design. And what these are principles that go beyond user interface or tech. These principles have kind of been around since the Renaissance, and they're universal and they're timeless, and really everyone in every industry is better off knowing what these are. And then we're going to get into super specific things you can do as an entrepreneur. Now, before I move forward, I forgot to ask, who has a website for their business right now? Awesome. And who's thinking of starting or building websites? Cool. Almost everyone said yes. Nice. So classic principles of design. Just things like balance. Think of a seesaw. And if you have one person sitting on one end, it's just going to go like this. So you want to have balance, and the same goes to design. Classic example is yin yang, and that's perfect balance, and you want to keep your design balance. Specific example is, think of a blog. You have your content on one side, and then the sidebar on the other side. And the sidebar is small, but the content's big, and it balances each other out for a really nice looking layout. You have emphasis. This is where you want to really put emphasis on a certain part of your design. This is great for when you want people to click on a button to purchase whatever you're selling online, or submit something on a forum. You want your button to be emphasized. And you can do things by, you can increase emphasis by doing things like increasing contrast, increasing size, and so forth. Movement. This is nowadays actual movement, but in older art forms and design forms, this is where you just, the design you're looking at or interacting with, it leads your eye to kind of move across the canvas. If it were painting, nowadays the website. And nowadays it's actual movement. You have things like animation that actually also increase emphasis to certain parts of your website. Then you have pattern, which is taking the same element and repeating it. It creates sort of unity to your design. And then you have unity. You'll see here, this is a screenshot from an app, and I have the person who created that on there, but you can't make it out on this projector, but you'll see that it's a weather app, and it has different sorts of weather. You have cloudy, sunny, and can't read that. But different sorts of weather, but you'll notice that it's the same font on every screen, same mountain shape. The only thing that changes is the actual data, and the sun and the moon icon, as well as the colors. But the fact that they use the same mountain shape and the same placement of all the logos, or the icons and the data, creates a very unified pattern. And it keeps people really giving them a sense of how the app works. There's no surprises there. Then you have proportion. This is where you can create hierarchy depending on how important your data is. The more important something is, the bigger you want to make it. And a good kind of mindset to have is to have a certain scale of hierarchy, meaning you want everything twice as big as the last thing, or 1.5 times as big as the last thing. That creates a unified scale, and that leads to visually pleasing design. Then you have rhythm. Rhythm is using the same couple of things. This is a little different than pattern. It uses the same couple of things to create kind of a rhythm, just like in a song. It almost creates a beat as you kind of look through it. This is an actual pattern, as you can see, of this person walking with headphones and balloon. But it creates rhythm in the sense that it's not the same balloon over and over. It kind of breaks up and then goes to the balloon again, breaks the design, and goes to the balloon again, and it kind of creates a really interesting rhythm. And then you want to have variety. I picked this example. All of the things right here that aren't images are from dribble.com. You can look up designs there done by people that are really cool. Dribble, like dribble basketball, but with 3 B's. So I picked this dribble shot because it has a pretty big variety of objects, but there's unity in the sense that it's using the same style of kind of outline and black filling, and it creates a really pleasant design because it looks like chaos, but it's organized chaos, and I really like that. So let's move on to why you're designing in the first place, and how you should design. So you want to design with purpose, or the goal of your business in mind. You need to design in order to achieve that goal. You don't want to waste your time, especially when you're starting out, to have throw up a site just to have a site. You want to have a site so your customers or users can interact with you in the way that you want to. And you need to keep that in mind every step along the way when you're designing your site or your product. And adjacent to what I said, no one goes to your site just to check out the design, unless you're a designer. They go there because they want some sort of information. If a really easy example is news blogs. You go to the site to check out news. And you can even do the same for product sites. They go there to, whatever you're selling, you're all entrepreneurs, your products kind of alleviate some sort of pain that your customers want. And they're going to your site so they can alleviate their pain. You want to keep that in mind too when you're creating the site. And that leads to the content of the site. It's really the king, and it's what you design around. Whether it's your product or your website that you're looking at, you want to make sure the content and whatever the user interacts with is the kind of top of the mantle in terms of how important it is. You don't want to design and then try to figure out the copy or the words. You want to try to figure out the content and then design around it. Occam's razor is a cool example. It's the simplest solution is always often the best. Like I mentioned, your content is much more important than your design, so make sure your content is good enough to sell your product or service, and then your design should help the content. Another thing is, don't overthink your design. If it works and it's producing results, stop tweaking it and stop trying to make it look perfect because you have other things to do. Let's talk about branding. First, take a look at that Burger King logo. It's not the actual Burger King logo, but it uses the same colors. And that specific logo makes me want to check out Burger King. But it still gives you a sense that it's Burger King. What do you think that is? If it didn't say Burger King, if it said something else, would you still think of it as Burger King? No. Your branding is how the kind of product or the branding makes your customers feel. It's not just colors and logos, it's the overall experience. But colors and logos are kind of the ingredients that make up that overall experience. Now, your branding also includes things like customer interface, how you talk to the customers, how you deal with their Twitter replies. That's all part of your brand, but in this presentation, we're going to focus on colors and logos. So, like I mentioned, it's more than just the visual stuff. It's the overall feeling of your brand. Color psychology is really awesome because it breaks this down into a science, and you don't have to feel it out. You can just kind of look at color psychology and choose a color palette that suits your needs. You have things like red, which is a very physical color. It invokes warmth and love, and it's a very strong color. So you want to use it sparingly if it's in your brand, but it does invoke strong feelings, excuse me. And then you have blue, which is an intellectual and safe color. And you'll see things like banks use it a lot because it invokes a sense of stability, and you want your bank to be stable. And you'll see hospitals use blue as well. And actually a lot of startups too. Facebook, Twitter, both, and LinkedIn, both all shades of blue. And you have yellow, which is more emotional. It's a little bit more lively and optimistic feeling color. And you'll use this for more creative stuff and more like laid back and friendly things. And you have green, which is balance and refreshment. And you'll see a lot of like eco-friendly things as well. And I forgot to mention that it's a very eco-friendly type of color. When you have things like Prius, you'll see a lot of their branding have green in the background, even though their Toyota color is different, but you'll see green with Prius a lot. Then you have black, which is sophistication and high-end, go to the 3rd floor of South Coast Plaza, a lot of the posters you see there are black background with like silver watches and stuff. And then let's move on to logos. With logos, you want to keep a few things in mind. You want to make it simple, make it distinct, personal, targeted, memorable, and timeless. The simple is self-explanatory. You don't want to make it super complicated. One, it's hard to draw. Two, people look at it and just kind of tune out. The simpler your logo is, better. And this kind of helps you be constrained in the sense that you have to be creative in the use of your logo and how you're creating your logo. You'll be distinct in your industry. Going back to the Nest example, we want to make sure that it stands out from everything. You don't want to try to look at your competition and match them, because you're not your competition, and matching them is not worth anyone's time. You want to try to be different. You'll be versatile. Think of logos like this aren't ever used in just like a huge nest of white space and there's a logo. They're often either on the header of your website or on a shirt or even on a truck. So you want to keep all those situations in mind. You want to make sure that the logo works well in those situations. And you want to target it towards your customer. Say you have a construction startup and you're working with a lot of construction company owners. They're a little bit more old school as design goes. You don't want to have like the same type of graphics you would put up for a startup for millennials. You want to keep your audience in mind. And you want to keep it memorable. You want it to work well enough so where they see your logo again, they'll know exactly who that company is. And you want to make it timeless. Being super trendy isn't very cost effective, and it doesn't make your logo memorable because you're going to be updating it quite a bit. So make sure to keep these things in mind. Here's some inspiration. This projector isn't doing so well, but you can go to Logospire on your own time and check that out. There's a bunch of different logos the designers submit. And you can also go to Dribbble, which is dribble.com, and just type in logo there. And Aaron Draplin is an amazing illustrator who specializes in simple logos. And I'll email everyone this link, or I'll have you guys kind of reach out and do that. And it's a 15-minute video, and he shows you the process of designing a logo from inception of idea to sketching it out on pencil paper, putting it in Illustrator, and spitting out a really well-designed logo. And it's really, it's an amazing video. So let's take a step back and look at the overall experience again. What do you want your brand to make people feel? Who wants to volunteer and use their startup? Cool. All right. Tell us a little bit about your startup.
A-Tree was designed to donate as a donation platform. In essence, I got the idea when I saw Groupon, Living Social, and Home District. I thought that they were a failed business model from the beginning, but I thought that there was good things to do. So what it is basically, just like Groupon or Living Social, you actually purchase a coupon on the website, a discounted coupon, and you use it. And when you use it, instead of the money going to Groupon or Living Social, 70 to 90% of the funds go to your nonprofit, your cause, your group, your organization.
Nice. So, describe some adjectives. Describe your startup in a few adjectives.
Giving, emotional, supportive.
Okay. It's giving and promotional. I'm guessing you want to invoke trust in your brand, and you want to have kind of openness in your brand. So going back to the colors we were talking about, you want to use maybe blues and greens, maybe a little bit of yellow. And what sort of words do you think you would put on your website, especially on the top header?
What we did do with our website is like one of our slogans is give, I mean, you help, you save, they grow.
That's awesome. I really like that. Yeah. And yeah, you want to look at the vocabulary you're using too, and that's part of your brand as well. I'm sorry?
I was teasing.
Okay.
I
Nice.
took credit for it, my idea.
It's on the record now. Yeah. Here's some cool stuff. What you can do to kind of check out branding is go to big brands that you like and just Google like Apple identity or brand guidelines. These are 2 links that I'm actually going to end up putting together an email and you guys will get it. The first one is standards manual pages, and they go through a lot of different brand guidelines, and you can check those out. Second one is for the NASA brand guidelines, and it's one of the original guidelines from like the 60s. It's really cool. You can check that out as well. You'll see the NASA logo and the different colors it can come in and how it's applied to space shuttles, and it's really cool. Not a lot of brand guidelines have how to apply your logo to a space shuttle, except SpaceX, but it's really worth checking out. Let's talk about tech-specific design. You have UX design and UI design, and it's people all the time ask what's the difference between UX and UI, and so much that you have a Tumblr called Shitty UI UX Analogies, and you can check that out. It's like the worst examples. UX design is your user's experience using your product, and it goes beyond just websites. You'll see things like Braun from 50s. Dieter Rams is one of the greatest designers that has lived, and he's made things that are easy to use. You can even look at things like scissors, how easy to use certain brands are compared to like 99-cent store version scissors, and that's all UX design. Even your car interface, how easy it is to switch between radio buttons and switch between the modes so you can plug in your phone, whatever, that's all user experience. Here are the things I'm going to talk about. Don't make me think, have pattern, load time, mobile friendly. We'll see what those are. Don't make me think is actually a book as well. It's the kind of motto for UX design. You want to make it stupid easy for your users and customers to do what they came to your site or product to do. You want to really think out every interaction that they can make with your company or product. You want to make every interaction delightful for them. You don't want to have to kind of make it painstaking for them. Everything should be thoughtfully organized from the ground up. And I highly encourage you to check that book out. It's like the Bible for UX design. Now let's talk about specific things that users do on sites. People read in an F pattern. What I mean by that is they'll read the headline first, and the first few sentences of every kind of subheader, and that's how they kind of go through a web page. They don't read every single word, and I'm sure no one here goes through a site reading every single word. And you want to keep that in mind so you can kind of game the system. You can put your most important content up top, and make sure your headline is really well crafted as well. And you want to have a conclusion if you're writing an article of some sort at the bottom. And you want to really make sure you're keeping this in mind when you're designing the site. Load time. If your website takes more than 3 seconds to load, over 60% of people leave like instantly, according to Google. And because of that, it negatively affects your SEO scores and your traffic plummets. To make sure that it loads well within 3 seconds. Mobile friendly. Over 60% of all traffic comes from a mobile device. And for that reason, your site needs to be fully responsive, meaning it should work on any screen size. It's highly suggested that you design for mobile first. That means is you design for a mobile screen size first, and all the content and image sizes should be that size, because people aren't always on their Wi-Fi and they have to use data to go to your site. So you want to make sure you don't have huge images that have to load and videos and all that. Yes?
Are you suggesting to build the site based on these smaller screens and then?
And then go up. That's how I'm actually redesigning my site as well.
Wow.
So what's happened is that the users have flipped.
Yeah.
And it's mobile first. And it used to be the other way around. You start with the vision of the desktop and how it's going to look, and then, oh yeah, we need to have a mobile site as well that migrated to mobile responsive, and now it's mobile first.
Exactly. And with that in mind, you want to make sure how people are interacting with your site. Like when you hold a phone, your thumb's down here, and you can't really reach the top too easily. So you want to keep your more important stuff down below. And that's actually a little interesting because a lot of websites have this kind of hamburger menu up top that you have to go up and reach, and then you get the menu. Whereas you go to facebook.com and you'll see that they have actual buttons at the very bottom. So you want to keep that in mind when you're creating something like an app where they're going to be interacting with it a lot more than just reading and scrolling up. Now you have UI design. This is the actual visual experience of the site. This is kind of, whereas UX is maybe the entire journey, UI is like the things that look at while they're going through this journey. And we're going to start by designing on the grid. Most graphic design classes show you to use columns, and it's almost become universal in web design that you want to use 12-column grid. Reason for that is it's divisible by 2, 3, 4, and 6. And if you've taken a graphic design or even a design or art class, you've heard of rule of thirds. And most of the time, you'll see a website with the menu up top, banner, huge banner, and then like 3 different things below. And another great benefit to this is since you're designing for a responsive website that works on any screen size, you can break it down to a tablet one where it's 8 columns instead of 12, and then a phone layout where it's 4 columns all the way down. And then you can kind of use those as building blocks to have a really, really cool design that works on every screen size. Another, like probably the best benefit to this is when you're designing your site on a 12-column grid, you can use frameworks like Bootstrap that come with a 12-column grid by default, and you can develop them pretty easily. White space. You want to use white space liberally and effectively. The more white space you have, the more it breaks up your design and gives your user the chance to look at all the content instead of a smushed up kind of chaotic design. They have a really nice, clean design. Take a look at Apple's website, and it's probably the best example of white space. Even their billboards are just text and like one product. It's really cool. Make buttons great again. There was a time a couple of years ago where you had these kind of flat design trend going on where everything was just flat colors, and then the problem arose from there is all the buttons were flat too, and you couldn't tell what's a back button or a forward button. You couldn't tell a button from a link. So now the trend is going back to more timeless style where buttons look like buttons, and they have depth and they have shadows, and you can tell that they're pressable. Much like an actual button on an elevator, it has light from the top, so there's shadow on the bottom, and you can tell that it's something that you can interact with. So you want to keep that in mind when you're creating things, because buttons are usually the biggest type of medium that you can add a call to action, and maybe it's add to cart or call us for a quote or whatever. Your button's usually doing the legwork for you online. And lastly, you want to add contrast, meaning you want to make it stand out from the rest of the design. In this example, the Connect with Facebook button stands out from the black, dark gray background, and you can tell what it is instantly. I personally like using warmer colors like orange or red, and then a white text, because that creates contrast, and you can also read it easily too. Now we're going to talk about online marketing, and the reason for that is it's not just visual design, it's a part of your experience too, and this is what ties in design with seeing results for your business. There's 2 important facets to online marketing. One is traffic, and one is conversion. Traffic is just people that go to your site, and conversion is your the visitor that goes to your site, is he or she performing the action you want them to perform. We have organic traffic, which is a result of SEO, direct traffic, which is people typing in your URL and hitting enter, or referral, which is people maybe seeing an ad on Facebook or whatever and clicking through. Or actually, an organic referral would be them seeing something on a blog post or a non-paid link. Then you have paid traffic, which is ads and retargeting. Ads are just ads, and then retargeting is someone that's gone to your site, they start seeing your ads on Facebook. And that's because you've placed a cookie on their browser and you've retargeted them. You can do this with Facebook pixels, or Google has one as well. And there's another one called perfectaudience.com that connects both Facebook AdWords, or Facebook ads, and Google AdWords. And then you have conversions. What mentioned earlier is conversion is really when a visitor is doing something you want them to do. It's usually either signing up to an email list and you offering them something in exchange, like a PDF or a free trial or something, or they just straight up purchase something from your site, so you have an online store. And a conversion is usually the best way to get them to enter your marketing funnel. And marketing funnel, you're all business majors, but reiterating it is, it's just different steps in the buying process, from going from like cold visitor to loyal customer. And you have awareness, which is they've heard of you. Then you have consideration, they're thinking of buying from you. You have conversion, which is depends on your startup, whether they're purchasing or doing something. If you have a blog, they're probably subscribed to your blog. And then you have loyalty, where they keep coming back and buying from you. And then the last one is, I feel like most important, is advocacy, where they're pretty much a foot soldier for your business and they kind of shout from the rooftops about how cool your business is. And this is nearing the end. Designers and developers. If you are not bootstrapping everything yourself, you maybe want to hire a designer or developer, or kind of work with one in exchange for equity of your startup. And you want to make sure that you're communicating well when you're designing with them, so you're or working with them at all. Say you have a product that you need development done. You can kind of work with them and make sure that you don't just say, hey, I need this, and then like walk away for 2 weeks and come back expecting it done. It's better to over communicate, be there every step of the way when you're working with someone, and you're going to make sure that it's much more pleasant experience and you get much better results the first time around because you're there every step of the way. Design specific communication is awesome because if you're designing a website, say, you can make specific adjustments to your site before you even develop it. You can use things like InVision, which allows you to collaborate on the visual design of your website. Then Slack is like IM, but within a browser, so you can talk without having to call someone, which is pretty cool. Some helpful stuff. You have flatUIcolors.com if you want to totally just find a color palette that's out there and works for you. I've used this for side projects all the time, and the colors there are really, really cool looking, and they work well together. And if you'd rather not do design work yourself, you can go to creativemarket.com. You can buy things like graphics, pre-made logos, or WordPress themes, or anything that's designed already. You can just purchase it and slap your own name on it and go from there. And as I mentioned, Dribbble.com is amazing. It's kind of show and tell for designers, and you can take a look at things in your industry and outside of your industry to kind of get some inspiration. And here's an amazing article on Medium called 7 Rules for Creating Gorgeous UI. I'll also send the link in the email. It's a 2-part blog post and gives you really specific steps on how to make your website better. And since it's kind of digital design, you can use that for graphic design for posters and branding as well. So.